I'm Eva Oh, and this is the Teakink podcast. I've been a dominatrix since 2011, and I would like to spill the tea on my life. Thank you for listening.
I don't talk about my life as an escort very much, so I think I should dedicate an entire episode to it. I'm not sure if many of you know about the fact that I was escorting once upon a time. How it began was that I had entered the dungeon, I had been in it for a few months, and I overheard people talking about their work in brothels and their work doing straight sex work. So how we differentiate it in the industry is you do fetish or kink sex work, which is usually professional domination, or you do straight work, which is the more escorting, working in brothels, massage parlor, sort of vanilla sex, penetrative sex work. And a lot of the mistresses were doing this at the same time, not usually integrating it. It was quite rare to do penetrative sex in the dungeon or in kink work in general, but it's something that they had run alongside their own businesses. And so I had heard about little stories and little kind of anecdotes, and I thought, okay, well, like this sounds kind of interesting, and also I wonder if it's an opportunity to earn more money, because it was like enough in the dungeon, but it wasn't like enough. And so I thought, okay, maybe I'll join like an agency. I think that seems to sound like it might suit me. Let me look for an agency. And so I look for this agency, and I I find this place that is taking interviews. And I thought, okay, I've done an interview before. I've come to the dungeon, did an interview. I can do an interview for an escort agency. Should be cool. Then I'll start and we'll see. And I go to this place in Sydney on Liverpool Street, like probably a rented small office right in the middle of the city on some high floor. And I meet this woman with super long blonde hair, probably extensions. I didn't understand what extensions were at the time, but now I understand they were probably hair extensions. Really long nails, like super like lush sort of round body, and like really high energy. And I can't really remember what she asks me, but it feels a lot more chit-chatty than the dungeon interview that I had, clearly. Also, the lighting's completely different. I mean, there's light in this office, for one, before in that fake office, which was actually a playroom in the dungeon that I was getting interviewed in for my dungeon job. It's night and day, quite literally. And she's like, oh yeah, I've organized a shoot, so we need photos for you. So on this day and this time, come back to the office and we'll go to the shoot location together. And it'll be fine. We'll organize all the lingerie, we've organized everything, and you just need to turn up. Like, okay. So I turn up and I go to this, like, I'm in front of the building, same building as before, right in the center of the city. And this like van sort of pulls up. And she's like appears out of the building, and she's like, oh, so we're gonna take this up to the location. It's about like 40 minutes away. And I'm like, 40 minutes? Wow, that's pretty far. And I get into the van alone with her. Now that I say that out loud, maybe that's not a great decision to have done. But anyway, this is what I did. Didn't tell anybody where I was. Didn't have my phone tracking on. Goodness. And we go to north Ku-ring-gai National Park in north of Sydney, and it's incredibly beautiful, and it's just her and I in this car. But when I get there, there's like 20 other girls like running around this house, and it's this house that you can't see so much from the road, but as you walk in, all of a sudden it opens up to this huge space. It's all white house, huge. And it's like pretty much all open plan. It looks down onto the river and it's just incredible looking. And she's like, okay, this is the lingerie, and this is where the makeup will be done, and this is the photographer, and you'll be good. And it's like, okay. And so I go in and I get my makeup done, and the makeup artist is really sweet, and it's like asking, oh, how long have you been in the industry? It's like, oh, I don't know, it's my first job, and I cannot imagine how green I must have seemed. It must have been so sweet. But anyway, we do this shoot day and a few weird things happen. Like the owner of the house turns up, who's this kind of raucous looking man in his late 40s with like, looks really weathered, covered in tattoos, and like takes some of us downstairs and like presses a button that shuts down the downstairs, and all of these weird disco lights start coming on. He's like, yeah, it's a disco room also. It's like, oh, that's great. Maybe we could go back upstairs once you press that button again. But downstairs is a series of bedrooms that are identical, and they all look out onto the river. It's just like stunning property, stunning. Anyway, I go up, I do the shoot. The photographer is super helpful, really helps me do all the sexy poses for the first time. Didn't know how to do all these sexy poses. And I go back to like makeup to like do touch-ups. And during this touch-up, the makeup artist very gently drops the hint that there's actually another agency around. And I like clock the name, but I don't really think anything about it. Anyway, the photos come back and apparently they're great. I get a call from the blonde, and obviously I'm safe at this point. I've managed to come back in this dark car from the middle of nowhere. And I get this call, yeah, the photos are great. We want to send you on tour to Melbourne next week, Saturday. And then I'm like, oh, I don't know if I feel good about working in another city on my own for my first escorting gig. And she's like, well, this is what's going to happen. This is just how it is. And it was like, well, I have to draw a line here. Like, this just does not feel like okay. So we just spent so much money on you. Can't believe that you're doing this to us now. Blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, all right. Well, then I guess that we're parting ways. And that's when the name of the other agency came back to me from that makeup artist. And I contact them. And the process is so much like nicer and smoother and more personal and transparent and supportive. And I don't know whether the escort agency owner would be happy with me mentioning their name. Maybe I'll ask them after this, and then I can like link them because we're on good terms. But I don't want to say people's names without asking them first. But anyway, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And my first booking with them, like she asked me, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. We've tried to find somebody who's like kink friendly, and they will also like sort of help you. It's like, you just see how you go, you know? And she had an in-call in Darlinghurst, which is in the center of Sydney. It was really beautiful, like all black and gold. And I remember walking in for the first time and she said, you know, I want the girls to be turned on too. And it was true. I really loved going to that place. And I did love the work also, actually. Now that I look back, I'm actually quite surprised at how much I was really into it. Like now I don't know. If I spent some time, I could probably move my head into that headspace again. Like having sex with people, no problem. You know, like as a professional, like I can just do it. But like when it came to like kissing and like swapping like fluids like this, which I'm personally a little bit icked out on, I was into it. I just did it. Like I was very good. Yeah, and creating like intimacy and like feeling close and all of this yeah, this nurturing understanding sort of a vibe. And I did all of these things from the get-go. I remember now that maybe he had a foot fetish, this first person that I had my escort booking with, but he but I didn't even get there. I was just like doing like the kiss, get you the drink, doing the kissing, take you to the bedroom, get that done, clean, get you in the shower, clean up the room, turn it over like I was taught to, and go back upstairs with the money and take my cut of it, you know? And it was similar, I think. It was like 60 and then 40 to the agency who did all the bookings and obviously owned the space and that kind of thing. But yeah, I didn't really think much of it. I liked the earning. The earning was more sporadic, but it was like more at once, you know. I would earn like 400 or so per gig, and sometimes I wouldn't earn that with multiple clients in a day at the dungeon. And so that was very helpful, obviously. Mm. But I was with them for a very long time. For a very long time. Well, maybe like 2 years, and which I think in that world is quite a long time, to the point when the owner was like, you know, you can just go independent. I'm like, guess so. And to be honest, I kind of feel like if the dungeon had stayed open, I probably would have been there much longer. I guess I kind of feel like I like a bit of routine, maybe, and I can feel like a loyalty also, to both the routine, the space, and the people a bit. Like nothing that I get too like needy over, but yeah, it was just like very familiar, and I trusted her, and I trusted my dungeon, and so I guess I really value trust, maybe. Yeah, it was trustworthy and reliable. And yeah, I mean, to be honest, I didn't really, you know, when people think about like straight sex work, penetrative sex, they focus a lot about the penetration. And sure, yeah, that happens, but the majority of the job is navigating personalities, in my opinion. You know, you're meeting so many people who want to feel seen. That's kind of the core of it, to be honest. They kind of want to feel like they get to share space with another human, and oh my god, you're actually recognizing me right now, and this is like the exchange. This is great, you know. I and like navigating how to make them feel comfortable within that, I think, is more the art of it, and that takes more like space than the wham bam kind of a side of things. And and also, like, there's something, at least when I was working in Sydney, there's like the girl, when you're escorting, there's something called the girlfriend experience or the porn star experience. And the girlfriend experience is differentiated in the industry, at least. How it's like it's the chit chat, it's like the sweetness and the niceness and whatever. And then you have like the more like raucous, like we're getting down to the sex, and it's kind of, and to be honest, the clients don't really know the difference. They kind of like being able to order the difference, but they don't really know how to take, you know, hold of so and I, to be honest, provided one service, you know. Like I didn't really do the girlfriend super well. I didn't really um yeah, I liked sex, and I liked getting to that and having that be the focus. And sure, there was how you make somebody feel into that focus, but I didn't know how to be super soft, yeah, or to not take charge. And I remember one of the brothel managers that I worked for once said, you know, it's like with you, people really like you or they just don't understand. Very, very diplomatic, isn't that? Because You're just you. Okay. Again, like me not really registering what somebody's trying to tell me and also not really caring. It's like just going about my way, you know? But I also, after the agency or alongside the agency, I worked in a small brothel that she popped up. And of course, this is all legal because this is decriminalized in New South Wales, Australia at the time and now. And that was a little bit more similar to the dungeon in that people could walk off the street, and there were many of us available at a certain time, and it was a space with lots of different rooms. And that was also really beautiful because it was designed by the same escort agency owner. But then that shut down, and that's the point when the agency owner said, well, why don't you just go like independent? And it's like, okay, how do I do this? And I don't think I put up any ads. I think that I was quite conscious to stay off of the radar and not mix the businesses for some reason. I don't know what was going through my head because I do know a lot of doms who have different profiles now even, but I didn't, yeah, I didn't even tell the dominatrices in the dungeon that I was hooking, that I was doing straight work. I guess I didn't want them to gossip because who I was working for was very prominent, and sometimes her name would be thrown around in the dungeon, and I didn't like that. Yeah, so I guess I just tried to keep it a little, give them less to talk shit about me about. But yeah, so after I went indie in the straight work stuff, I just tried like every place that was available in Sydney that had an okay reputation. You know, I went to Stilettos, which is a huge brothel with sometimes like, I don't know, like 60 people available, maybe more. Yeah, and multiple rooms, and it was such like a seamless-ish operation where they had cleaning staff. Like you never had to clean your room. You kind of like walked in to meet the client, they would choose you, and then you would go and do the booking, and then you just leave the room. And that to me by that point was like unheard of because normally I'd have to clean the room and then turn it over, be ready for the next person. And it was just like, oh wow, this is easy. Yeah, but I did really well at Stilettos. I did like sometimes 8 bookings a night, and I'm not very good at upselling, but just like for the straight bookings, it was pretty good. Yeah. And sometimes you do party bookings, and party is code for drugs. And like you learn ways to not do drugs, but look like you're doing them. And yeah, and so it was, yeah. And then I went and tried another brothel further in the inner west, which was like the beds were harder and there was no cleaning staff, and they were not as selective with who was working there, and so there were definitely some people with issues who were working there, and so I left that fairly quickly. And I also tried massage parlors. um, I got lucky in that I think somebody who tried being a mistress said, actually I also work at this massage parlor, maybe you can try it out, and brought me to one just down the road. And what happens, I'm not sure if now, but back then, would be that these massage parlors would sort of get hired or booked by the manager, and the manager would have a set of people who they would want to work for them in that slot on that day or whatever. And so there might be 8 of us working in this one house, always with the same manager. And that manager would take us to another house, and then we would work that also. And she was, I cannot remember her name. She was tough. She was so tough and really harsh, but it worked well for me because I'm super structured anyway, and I like just knowing where the boundaries are. Yeah, and I'm very reliable, and so it worked really well actually. And I worked with her until I left Sydney, actually. So I had all of these things kind of juggled. By this point, the dungeon had closed and I was doing independent domination work. And I was not with the escort agency anymore, but I would sort of drop into the massage place and the brothel every now and then just to kind of supplement my income. And I kept a few clients from when I was working with the agency, like very few, maybe like two, like one rugby player who would come and like paint my toenails mostly. And another super sweet but very questionable character who was covered in tattoos and had way too much access to way too many drugs. But yeah, I mean, reliable clients and enabled my existence, you know, like I could live from what I was getting paid. And the job was, you know, interesting enough. And it kept me stimulated, you know, it's like not just sexually. That was another thing. Like, I have this thing where I turn myself on, so it doesn't really matter what's in front of me. If I'm attracted to somebody, then I get an emotional experience out of it. But actually, I can always get physical gratification out of like anyone. Which is a talent when you are in this industry, I tell you. Because it keeps you motivated. But yeah, I had an interesting time trying out all of these different facets. And a part of me misses the communal sort of like being in a house with people thing. Like a part of me considers what that would be like to join a space where other workers are and like do a little bit of a hustle. But unfortunately now I think that I've just priced myself way out of that possibility. Um, yeah, yeah. But a part of me still really remembers enjoying that. Yeah. So who knows what kind of format could come in our futures. Mm. But that was a little introduction to my escorting straight work past, and perhaps I'll go a little bit more into that, yeah, in time. In time. It's just was maybe a year and a half, 2 years of my work life, and it's been like since 2011 professional domination. So I guess I have more time to have thought about the domination angle of things and more experience also. But I think that could be interesting for me to delve into the straight work side of what I was processing also. So thank you for listening. I'll speak with you next time.